At the family dinner, I walked in wearing my usual plain sweater and old shoes. They looked me up and down, smirking. "Still shopping at the bargain rack, huh?" The room filled with laughter, not with me, but at me. I swallowed my pride and kept quiet. But what they didn't know was this. Tucked away in my bag was the signed check that would cover their $250,000 mortgage. Tell me, have you ever been mocked for living simple, only for the truth to reveal who was really holding the power? Stay with me. I've never been one for fancy clothes. I wear what's comfortable, what lasts. A cardigan I've had for years, shoes that may be scuffed but still walk steady. To me, clothes are meant to serve, not to show. But my family never saw it that way. Over time, they began to measure worth by labels. Expensive suits, designer handbags, glittering jewelry. Every holiday or gathering turned into a runway, and I never fit their mold. At first, the comments were lighthearted. "Oh, you're so practical," they'd say. But slowly, the words sharpened. This year, at the family dinner, the whispers started as soon as I walked in. "Look at her shoes. Didn't she wear those last year? Maybe she doesn't know how to shop anywhere but the clearance rack." The chuckle spread around the table like wildfire. My niece even snapped a photo under the table, sending it around with a smirk. I felt the sting, but I kept my head high. They saw cheapness in my clothes, but they didn't see the years of wisdom in my choices. They didn't see the bank account I had built, dollar by refusing to chase appearances, because while they spent thousands on wardrobes and dinners, I spent carefully, saved wisely, and invested with patience. I drove an old car, cooked meals at home, and wore the same jacket season after season, and through those choices, I built something they couldn't imagine: security. That security turned into opportunity the moment I learned that my nephew and his wife were behind on their mortgage. $250,000 of debt hung over their heads like a storm cloud. They whispered about foreclosure, about losing the house. I had kept quiet. I listened, and I decided I could help. So, while they mocked my sweater and snickered at my shoes, they had no idea that the cheap one at the table was about to lift a weight they couldn't carry. Because sometimes the loudest laughter comes before the sharpest lesson. Dinner carried on, filled with chatter and clinking silverware. I stayed quiet, letting them laugh at my cardigan, letting them compare shoes and handbags like trophies. Finally, as dessert plates were cleared, my nephew's wife sighed heavily. "We're just so stressed," she muttered, lowering her voice. "The bank's been calling nonstop. If we don't come up with the money soon, we could lose the house." The table fell silent. Eyes darted between them, sympathy mixed with discomfort. No one offered help. No one even knew what to say. I set my fork down and looked across the table. "How much is it?" They hesitated, embarrassed. My nephew cleared his throat. "250,000, the mortgage balance. We're behind, and we don't see a way out." Gasps rippled through the room. A cousin whispered, "That much?" I nodded slowly, my hands calm on the table. "I see." Then, without a word, I reached into my bag, the same bag they had laughed at earlier, saying it looked cheap. From it, I pulled out an envelope. I slid it across the table toward my nephew. "Open it," I said simply. He frowned, confused, then carefully unfolded the flap. His eyes scanned the paper inside, and in an instant, his jaw dropped. His wife covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide with tears. It's a check," he stammered. "For $250,000. The room froze. Forks clattered against plates. Conversation stopped cold. Every mocking smile vanished. I leaned back, my voice steady. "Yes, enough to clear your mortgage, enough to keep your house, enough to give you peace again." The silence that followed was heavy, shameful. The same people who had chuckled at my sweater now sat staring, stunned at the check. My niece, the one who had snapped a photo of my shoes, whispered, You had that kind of money?" I smiled faintly. Money doesn't come from labels or cars or jewelry. It comes from choices, from years of living simple, saving when no one noticed, and investing when no one cared. My nephew's wife burst into tears. "We don't deserve this," she said through sobs. "Maybe not," I said gently. "But family means stepping up when it matters. Even if family forgets to show kindness first." Around the table, no one laughed anymore. Faces flushed with shame. My siblings shifted uncomfortably. realizing their sharp words about my clothes now looked foolish in the shadow of a six-figure check. And for the first time that night, all eyes were on me. Not with ridicule, but with respect. I folded my hands calmly. So the next time you look at my sweater or my shoes and see cheap, remember this moment, because cheap doesn't pay a $250,000 mortgage, but wisdom does. The room was quiet, too quiet, and in their silence I found my dignity restored. For a long moment, no one moved. The check lay on the table like a mirror, reflecting not just numbers, but every word, every smirk, every laugh they had thrown at me earlier. Finally, my sister cleared her throat. We didn't realize, she whispered. Her eyes dropped to the tablecloth. We shouldn't have made fun of you. A cousin chimed in, nervously fiddling with her bracelet. It was just joking. We didn't mean any harm. I looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. Joking stops being harmless when it chips away at someone's dignity. I may not wear expensive labels, but don't mistake that for lack of worth. The words landed heavy. My niece, the same one who had taken that photo, looked especially pale. She pushed her phone aside and muttered, I'm sorry. My nephew clutched the check like it was a lifeline. His wife wiped her tears, whispering, We'll never forget this. You've saved us. But I wasn't finished. I leaned forward, my voice calm but steady. This isn't just about saving a house. It's about reminding you all what matters. Clothes fade, cars break down, jewelry loses shine. But choices, wise, patient choices, can build a future. That's what I did. And you mocked it. No one argued. No one dared. Instead, they sat quietly, as if the weight of their own arrogance was finally pressing down. For once, I wasn't invisible or the butt of their jokes. I was the person who held the most powerful voice at the table. A younger cousin spoke softly. I always thought you were just frugal. I didn't realize you were building something bigger. I smiled faintly. There's strength in living simple. You don't need to show off to be secure, and sometimes the person you dismiss is the one carrying more than you'll ever know. The air shifted. The same relatives who had mocked my cardigan now avoided my gaze, their laughter gone, replaced by quiet shame. After dinner, as people gathered their coats, several cousins hugged me tighter than usual. My sister lingered, her voice low. We'll try to do better. We've been blind, I nodded, not gloating, not angry, just firm. I don't need your apologies. I need your respect. And not just for me, for anyone who chooses wisdom over appearances. When I left that night, I didn't walk out as the cheap one anymore. I walked out as the one who had taught them a lesson no brand name could ever buy. And though they might forget the laughter they shared at my expense, they would never forget the moment the woman in the bargain sweater dropped a $250,000 check on the table. Because sometimes the richest lesson comes from the simplest clothes. In the weeks after that dinner, things felt different. The phone rang more often, not with gossip or shallow chatter, but with genuine questions. How are you doing? Do you need anything? My family, once quick to tease, now seemed careful with their words. It wasn't perfect. Old habits don't vanish overnight, but the shift was real. At the next gathering, no one chuckled at my sweater or scuffed shoes. Instead, they pulled out a chair for me at the center of the table, not at the end. My nephew and his wife visited often, their gratitude evident in every action. They invited me over for dinners, helped with chores I usually did alone, and spoke openly about how the mortgage relief had changed their lives. We sleep at night now, his wife confessed once, tears in her eyes, because of you. But what mattered most wasn't the thank yous. It was the quiet respect. The understanding that value isn't stitched into fabric or polished onto shoes, it's built in the unseen, in choices and discipline, in sacrifices no one claps for. One afternoon, my niece, the same one who had mocked me the loudest, came by unexpectedly. She held out a small bag with a sweater inside, plain and sturdy. I thought of you, she said sheepishly. I wanted to start learning how you live, instead of laughing at it. I held the sweater in my hands, touched more deeply than I let on. It's not about clothes, I told her. It's about respect, for yourself and for others. Live wisely, and you'll never need to prove anything with a label. Her eyes softened. I understand now. I realized then that the $250,000 wasn't just a check. It was a lesson etched into their memory. They would never forget the night their laughter turned to silence, the night they saw that dignity wears no price tag. And for me, it was never about recognition or applause. It was about reclaiming the respect that had been stripped by years of shallow judgment. Walking out of that banquet hall, I felt taller, not because of the check I had written, but because I had reminded them, and myself, that simple doesn't mean small. In the end, I didn't change my wardrobe. I still wore my cardigan, still laced up my old shoes. But when I stepped into a room, the glances I received were no longer mocking. They were different, hesitant, thoughtful, sometimes even admiring. Because once you've shown people the true weight of wisdom, they can never look at you the same way again. In the end, it was never about the sweater or the shoes. It was about worth, the kind that can't be measured by price tags. My family learned that night that the one they mocked for being cheap was the very person who held their future steady with a $250,000 check. True wealth isn't what you wear, it's what you build quietly, day by day, through sacrifice and wisdom. And respect? That should never depend on appearances. So let me ask you, have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked or what you owned, only to prove everyone wrong later? How did it feel when the truth finally came out? Share your story in the comments and stay with us for more tales where dignity and quiet strength always win.